It's the weekend, Saturday, June the 14th. Try to understand each other. The word for you today. Try to understand each other. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Peter's given instructions on, in this particular case, to husbands. It says, "Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as the weaker partner, and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers." Peter's telling husbands how to act toward their wives. Starts off, he identifies who his target is. Husbands. Husbands. This is a message directed to husbands. Husbands in the same way. Well, what does in the same way mean? Well, if this is chapter 3. If you go back to chapter 2, verse 21, it tells us that Jesus is our example, and we should imitate him. We should act in the same way that Jesus acted. You say, well, Jesus wasn't a husband. No, he wasn't. But the way he dealt with people, the way he treated people, we're to act in the same way as Jesus. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives. Be considerate, be sensitive, be understanding. Try to see things from her point of view. Study your wife, get to know her. One wife said to her husband, "It's your job to get to know me. It's my job to keep changing." Seems that way sometimes, doesn't it? Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives. Treat them with respect as the weaker partner. It's the weaker partner. A lot has been said about that. Has the idea of a valuable, expensive vase, something that is very valuable, something that's very expensive, something that can be very fragile, and you handle it carefully. You don't toss it around. You don't bang against it. You treat it carefully with honor. And that's how we are to deal with our wives. Treat her with honor. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives. Treat them with respect as the weaker partner, and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life. Heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, of eternal life. Guys, your wife is an heir of Jesus Christ, just as you are. Matter of fact, your wife is a daughter of God. Let me ask you, how would you treat God's daughter? How would you treat God's daughter? That's your wife. That's your wife. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives. Treat them with respect as the weaker partner, and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. So that nothing will hinder your prayers. What's he talking about? A husband who dishonors his wife, his prayer life is hindered. It is. And you say, in what way? Well, first of all, he probably won't want to pray because deep down he knows what he's doing is wrong. So there's no desire. I don't want to talk to a God who I'm dishonoring his daughter. His prayers won't be heard. Why? Because you've got something you got to deal with, how you've dishonored your wife. Just as our physical bodies get out of whack over sometimes small things, this is something that get our spiritual bodies out of whack. What, husbands, as we dishonor our wives. We get a hold of this idea. See her as a daughter of God. A precious gift to us. And then treat her that way. Yeah, but what if it doesn't say if she deserves it, if she earns it. It says this is how we are to treat her. And it might make a difference in her. You say, well, what if it doesn't? If it doesn't, it doesn't, but then you've done your part. There was a fictional story called Johnny Lingo's 8-Cow Wife. And it's a story about, in the Pacific Island, primitives, where a man paid the dowry for his wife in cows. If a man gave 2 or 3 cows for his wife, that you could get an okay wife for that. If it was 4 or 5, now that was a good wife. But Johnny Lingo, he paid 8 cows for his wife, an unheard of price, much more than anybody else would ever give. And actually, the people on the island made fun of him for giving so much for his wife, because really they said, she's really plain looking. She's really not all that great. And you paid 8 cows for her? But one person started asking Johnny Lingo some questions. Says, why did you pay so much for her? And Johnny says, do you ever think, he asked, what it must mean to a woman to know that her husband has settled on the lowest price for which she can be bought? 2 or 3 cows. And then later, when the women talk, they boast of what their husbands paid for them. One says 4 cows, another maybe 6. How does she feel, the woman who was sold for 1 or 2 cows? This could not happen to my Sarita. The person said, then you did this just to make your wife happy. Johnny says, I wanted Sarita to be happy, yes. But I wanted more than that. You say she is different, since she was paid 8 cows for it. This is true. Many things can change a woman. Things that happen inside, things that happen outside. But the things that matters most is what she thinks about herself. In Kinawana, Sarita believed that she was worth nothing. Now she knows she is worth more than any other woman in the islands. Questioner says, then you wanted, and Johnny interrupted, I wanted to marry Sarita. I loved her and no other woman. The questioner says, but, Johnny says, but, Johnny said, I wanted an 8-cow wife. Guys, what are you paying for your wife? How much is she worth to you? She might be, if you're treating her as a 1 or 2 cow wife, don't be surprised what you get sometimes. But if you're treating her like an 8-cow wife, tell your wife she's worth 8 cows today. See what she says. Maybe better not. But treat her as she's worth more than any other wife around. See if that doesn't make a difference. Have a good weekend. I hope to see you in church on Sunday.